Hello, everyone. My name is Claire Gailans. I have been blind since birth, so all my school and university music studies were undertaken using Braille music. I've worked in Braille music production since 1980, and for the second half of this period, I have been increasingly involved in the teaching of the Braille music code and also collaborating with musical colleagues on UCAF on setting standards for accessible music formats. What is accessible music? There have been forms of music for as long as there have been people on the earth. For many centuries, the system for notating Western music has been truly international, with no boundaries of language, such as we find in other forms of written literature. Accessible music has a corresponding international reach, which means that there is a worldwide incentive to get it right. Accessible music needs to reach people with many disparate challenges. Musicians with little or no sight who have learned Braille need music in Braille. Those with useful partial sight or whose sight is deteriorating will need modified Stave notation. Those who have not learned Braille through lack of exposure to it or through physical difficulties, or those who have challenges of neurodiversity, may choose to work with talking scores. And all of these groups and others may need the increasing range of software solutions to producing music. Many people will also use a combination of several or even all of these methods of gaining access to the music they need. Braille music has come down to us from the inventor of Braille, Louis Braille. There are many Braille codes, and all are derived from cells comprising combinations of 6 dots. Braille is read with the fingers, so there is no reliable way of sweeping the page or electronic display, as is possible with the eyes, for the next piece of relevant information. Instead, all information must be read sequentially. You will understand from this that Braille music cannot be read in the two-dimensional system of lines and spaces that comprises the printed stave, but must be shown in a system which can be read from left to right, as words are read. This presented Louis Braille with enormous challenges, as he had to convey not only the pitch, but also the duration of notes, and the huge variety of other information necessary to convey all the information required to learn, perform, or study a music score. The Braille music code has been very little altered in the almost 200 years since Louis Braille devised it, and a great deal of music has been and continues to be produced using it. There have been many international conferences which have settled the finer points of interpreting printed symbols for transcription into Braille, so musicians can use scores from many countries with ease. As printed music has evolved, resulting from new techniques and visual aspects such as use of color, transcribers have had to find ways to express or describe these new ways of notating music. Modified stave notation is a form of enlarged print music, but because of the wide variation in the size of printed symbols, it is rarely as straightforward as enlarging the size of the print overall. Indeed, these scores have often been custom made, as the eye conditions of users are many and various, and much depends on the use to which the score is to be put, be it performance, study, or teaching. Talking scores are recordings which describe the music on the printed page in short segments, enabling entire pieces to be practiced and committed to memory. The first talking scores were produced on cassette tape and CD, but now software is being developed for their production. What's happening with accessible music standards? We are constantly working to achieve the highest possible standards for Braille, modified Stave notation, and talking scores, but we realize that the software world has a more specific application for the term standards. The W3C Music Notation Community Group is working on the development of the file format Music XML, and what is to be hoped will be a developed replacement for Music XML, MNX. What resources are there for learning and learning about accessible music formats? On the UCAF music page, you will find links to the new International Manual for Braille Music Notation, as well as guidance produced by the UCAF music subject area on producing Braille music scores. Members of the UCAF Braille Music Task Group have produced a series of 6 podcasts, which form an introduction to the Braille music code and offer sources of further help. UCAF has also produced guidance on the production of modified Stave notation scores and on that of talking scores. The Royal National Institute of Blind People, RNIB, produces some Braille music tutors, such as Braille Music for Beginners by Joan Partridge. The W3C Music Notation Community Group is also an invaluable resource for keeping in touch with developments mentioned earlier in this presentation. It might also be worth keeping in touch with developments of the wealth of print music notation programs. What important technological developments are happening with accessible music? The DAISY Braille Music Project is working internationally towards producing a global transcription tool for the production of Braille music scores. The producers of the mainstream software MuseScore and Dorico are working to bring as much accessibility as possible into their programs. Additionally, work on various software programs such as iBoss from Denmark, Goodfeel from Dancing Dots in the US, and work in Italy, Japan, and Vietnam should not be forgotten. Some practical applications of technology. Here are a few situations where use of a digital Braille music file could have significant advantages for both student and teacher. We have a scenario where a sighted teacher is working with a blind piano student. The student has the Braille music on a Braille display. They can add fingering, practice tips, or whatever arises during the lesson, creating an edited score. A second scenario could be where a blind singer in a choir could write in cues, rehearsal markings, if different from the Braille score, bar numbers, if that would be helpful, and other practice notes from the conductor during the rehearsal. Another situation could be where a blind teacher can create a library of electronic scores for use in lessons with sighted students, negating the need to carry around volumes of hard copy Braille. How is accessible music being used? Many people in the UK and worldwide are using the accessible formats described earlier in a great many ways. These range from instrumentalists playing in orchestras and church music directors to members of choirs made up of amateurs. They also include teachers and students from beginners through school public examinations to university students. The Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music and other examining bodies also produce their examination material in accessible formats and number many visually impaired and neurodiverse people among their successful candidates. I hope you have found this presentation useful and interesting. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to email me on cgailans, that's CGAILANS, at uwclub.net. Thank you very much.